A student's overview of the ageless wisdom was carefully compiled from the following books by Alice A. Bailey. A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Esoteric Psychology, Volumes 1 and 2. Esoteric Healing. Esoteric Astrology. The Rays and the Initiations. Students are encouraged to download the free PDF version of this overview by following the link in the video's description, or to order a printed copy at cost from thebookpatch.com, but are advised to read the original, unabridged books in order to gain deeper insight into the ageless wisdom. Students are also invited to join our online study group at facebook.com/groups/students of the ageless wisdom. Chapter 74: The Rays and the Initiations. The significance of the initiations. We now start our consideration of the 9 initiations. Only this time we shall be occupied with the relationship and the detail connected with each initiation, viewing them when possible from the angle of the hierarchy and its effort on behalf of the evolutionary progress of the race, and not so much from the angle of the soul-infused personality of the disciple. It must be remembered from the start that no disciple can pass through the initiatory experience unless he is a soul-infused individual and is consciously aware on soul levels of the various happenings, possibilities, undertakings and implications. In all the many books which I have given to the world, I have taught much anent initiation. I have sought to bring a saner, more reasonable presentation of these great crises in the life of every disciple. It is wise to note that an initiation is in reality a crisis, a climaxing event, and is only truly brought about when the disciple has learned patience, endurance and sagacity in emerging from the many preceding and less important crises. An initiation is a culminating episode, made possible because of the self-inspired discipline to which the disciple has forced himself to conform. Much has been said in the occult books about the preparatory work to be done and the effort which such a task entails, plus the realization of the consequences initiated and expressing themselves through the individual aspirant. Little has been said anent the more important truth that initiation admits a man into some area or level of the divine consciousness, into a plane or rather a state of being hitherto regarded as sealed and closed. Initiation I, the birth at Bethlehem. I have preserved the above Christian nomenclature because of its familiarity and because, symbolically speaking, it conveys an aspect of a major truth. Just as the birth of a child is an entrance into light, literally speaking, and the beginning of an entirely new way of life, so each successive initiation is in an exactly similar manner an entrance into light, involving the revelation of a different world to the one hitherto known, and the undergoing of entirely new experiences. The first initiation might be regarded as the goal and the reward of the mystical experience. It is fundamentally not an occult experience in the true sense of the term, for it is seldom accurately realized or consciously prepared for, as is the case of the later initiations, and this is why the first 2 initiations are not considered major initiations. In the mystical realization there is naturally and normally an emphasis upon dualism, but in the new area of unfoldment, visioned and later to be struggled for and attained, initiation by initiation, unity is achieved and dualism disappears. Students should therefore have in mind the following definite occult concept. The mystical way leads to the first initiation. Having achieved its purpose, it is then renounced, and the lighted way of occultism is then followed, leading to the lighted areas of the higher states of consciousness. End of page 377. Thus both ways are seen to be essential. The mystical way is for the majority at this time, and an increasingly large number of mystics will emerge out of the modern masses of men. Paralleling this, the occult way is attracting more and more of the world intelligentsia. Its experience is not basically religious, as the Orthodox Churchman understands the word. The way of science is as deeply needed by mankind as is the way of religion, for God is found equally on both ways. The scientific way leads the aspirant into the world of energies and forces, which is the true world of occult endeavor, revealing the universal mind and the workings of that great intelligence which created the manifested universe. The new man who has come to birth at the first initiation must and will tread the occult or scientific way, which inevitably leads him out of the world of mysticism into the scientific and assured perception of God as life or energy. The first initiation marks the beginning of a totally new life and mode of living. It marks the commencement of a new manner of thinking and of conscious perception. The life of the personality in the three worlds has for eons nurtured the germ of this new life and fostered the tiny spark of light within the relative darkness of the lower nature. This process is now being brought to a close, though it is not at this stage entirely discontinued, for the new man has to learn to walk, to talk, and to create. The consciousness is now, however, being focused elsewhere. This leads to much pain and suffering until the definite choice is made, a new dedication to service is vouchsafed, and the initiate is ready to undergo the baptism initiation. Initiation 2. The baptism in Jordan. The initiation which we are now to study is perhaps one of the most important, because it concerns that aspect of the personality which gives the most difficulty to everybody, the emotional or astral body. Today the mass of men are swept by the emotions and by a sensitive response to circumstance. They are not swept usually by an intelligent reaction to life as it is. The normal and usually violent reaction serves only to increase the confusion and the attending difficulties, producing vortices of uncontrolled energies, glamour and delusion. Even though it may at the same time produce a saving aspect in some cases, the violence of the astral testing and the potency of the astral temptation, as it might well be called, leads to a greatly increased sphere of suffering. To this must be added the materialistic bias of the many presented solutions, bringing in the force of the world Maya and thus greatly complicating the problem. Distressing as all this may be, and significant of the end of this age and the cessation of the Atlantean vibration and quality which has carried over so potently into this Aryan cycle, it is however indicative of the attainment of a definitely racial opportunity. Humanity, on a relatively large scale, faces the second initiation, or the baptism initiation. The concept of baptism is ever associated with that of purification. Water has ever been the symbol of that which purifies. It is also the symbol of the astral plane, with its instability, its storms, its tranquilities, its overwhelming emotional reactions and its pliability, which makes it such a good agent for the deceptive thought-forming faculties of the unregenerate man. It reacts to every impulse, every desire and every possible magnetic pull coming from the material or substantial form side of nature. In its cycles of tranquility it reflects equally the good as well as the bad. It is the agent, therefore, of deception when manipulated by the Black Lodge, or of aspirational reaction when influenced by the Great White Lodge, the spiritual hierarchy of our planet. It is the battleground between the pairs of opposites. The problem is complicated by the fact that men have to learn to recognize these opposites before right choice, leading to spiritual victory, is theirs. This second initiation, as now undergone, is to some extent one of the most difficult. It involves purification, but it is purification by fire, symbolically understood. The occult application of fire to water produces certain most serious and devastating results. The water, under the action of fire, is resolved into steam, and the initiate is immersed in the fogs and miasmas, the glamours and the mists thus caused. Out of this fog and out of the glamours, the initiate must emerge. Out of the present fog of human affairs, humanity will also emerge eventually. The success of the individual initiate is the guarantee of the racial destiny. The complications, produced by water in conjunction with fire in these Aryan days, are far greater than those produced entirely by water in Atlantean times. This age is karma manasic and not simply kamic or strictly astral. Remember therefore as you read these words that I am speaking symbolically. The fire of mind today has to be reckoned with in conjunction with the water of desire, and it is owing to this that much of humanity's problem develops. It is because of this that the second initiation has become one of the most difficult which the modern disciple has to take. End of page 378. The result, however, of the modern initiatory process is of a much higher order. This statement is related to the emerging fact that the hierarchy and its personnel in process of assembling will be of a much higher order than that previously responsible for human guidance. A more advanced humanity demands a more advanced hierarchy and hierarchical supervision. This has ever been the case. The evolutionary process covers all that is. Even Sanat Kumara is learning and advancing from a relative imperfection to perfection. This baptism of fire, to which reference is made in the Western scriptures, carries with it inevitably the connotation of pain, and this to an extent hitherto unknown. Even a casual glance at world affairs will reveal the truth of this statement. Under the influence of the Piscan cycle, which is now in process of termination, the sixth ray of idealism or devotion was predominantly active. This is the ray of one-pointed determination and, from one angle, it is the ray of blind procedure. The individual, the group or humanity, sees only one aspect of reality at any one time, and, because of man's present point in the evolutionary process, usually the least desirable aspect. All else is sealed to them, they vision only one picture, their horizon is limited to only one point of the compass, speaking esoterically. To the mass of humanity, the aspect of reality which was visioned and for which men lived and died was the material world, material comfort, material possessions and material enterprises. To this the labor movement today and the tendencies already apparent in the United Nations bear incontrovertible testimony. To a much smaller group of human beings the world of the intelligence appears paramount, and the concrete mind is the desired ruler or controlling factor. All, therefore, remains within the area of material control and interest. The solar plexus center is consequently the dominant factor, because, even in the case of the intelligentsia, it is desire for material well-being, for territorial possessions and for planned governmental and economic material decisions which control and motivate the individual, the group or the nation. These are not necessarily wrong, but, under the present emotional desire concept, they are placed in the foremost position and are regarded as causal in their nature. Nevertheless, they are fundamentally secondary in their nature, and are effectual in their essential nature, placing the emphasis upon the word effect. Humanity, even in its advanced brackets, is not yet able to think on causal levels. What is the basic goal of the initiate who has taken the second initiation? I would ask you to transit in consciousness from the concept that the process of initiation is a consummation of effort, to the higher and better concept that it is initiatory in effect and marks a beginning and not a consummation. What, therefore, lies ahead of the initiate who has entered the purificatory water, or rather, fire? To what is he pledged? What is to happen within the area of livingness? I want you to familiarize yourselves with that phrase, and what results will take place within the mechanism with which he approaches the place of initiation. These are the factors of importance, and these are the aspects of the life process which should condition him. At the close of the initiatory process, certain energies and divine aspects should be recognized by him as now playing a part in his thinking and his purposes, energies which heretofore, even if present, were quiescent and not controlling. Before him lies the third initiation of the transfiguration. Facing him is a great transition from an emotional aspirational focus to an intelligent, thinking focus. He has, theoretically at least, cast off the control of the astral body and nature. Much still remains to be done. Old desires, ancient astral reactions and habitual emotions are still powerful, but he has developed a new attitude to them and a new perspective to the astral body. Water, fire, steam, glamour, delusion, misinterpretation and emotional continuity still means something specific and undesirable to him. He is now negative to their appeal and positive to the higher demanding focus. That which he now loves and longs for, desires and plans for, lies in another and higher dimension. He has, through his willingness to pass through the second initiation, struck the first blow at his innate selfishness and has demonstrated his determination to think in wider and more inclusive terms. The group begins to mean more to him than himself. End of page 379. What has happened, technically speaking? The energies of the solar plexus center are being transferred from the major clearing house below the diaphragm to the heart center, one of the three major centers into which all the lower energies must transfer. At the first initiation he was granted a vision of a higher creativity, and the energy of the sacral center began its slow ascent to the throat center. At the second initiation, he is granted a vision of a higher focus, and his place in the larger whole begins slowly to reveal itself. A new creativity and a new focus become his immediate goals, and for him life can never again be the same. The old physical attitudes and desires may still at times assume control. Selfishness may continue to play a potent part in his life expression, but, underlying these and subordinating them, will be found a deep dissatisfaction about things as they are and an agonizing realization of failure. It is at this point that the disciple begins to learn the uses of failure and to know certain fundamental distinctions between that which is natural and objective and that which is supernatural and subjective. We therefore come back to the problems of the astral plane, of the emotional level of consciousness, and to the second initiation, This initiation releases men from emotional control and enables them to shift their consciousness onto mental levels, and from that higher point of focus to control their normal and well-developed emotional attitudes. If you will turn back, you will find that the 3 keynotes are given for this second initiation and for its technique. I would like to call your attention to them because they present those keynotes which give us the clue to the world problems and indicate at the same time the solution and the way out of the present impasse. These 3 words are dedication, glamour, devotion. It is the dedication of the aspirant which invokes the fire. You have here a statement of major importance. The aspirant upon the higher levels of the astral plane is swept by the fire of dedication. This immediately focuses his will as it demonstrates on the mental plane, and this focusing in due time starts the serious undertaking of the shifting of his consciousness onto mental levels. Then immediately the fire works, and the first reaction, as I have earlier pointed out, is the meeting of fire and water and consequently the production of fog, mist, of glamour and illusion. All of these 4 words must be understood symbolically. The glamours thus induced are dependent upon the ray and the point of evolution of the individual and the nation. It is essential that you learn to think in the widest possible terms. What will be the result of the combination in one's life of these 3 factors? Primarily 2 things. 1. The solar plexus center will be brought, first of all, into a condition of almost violent and compelling activity. This activity is induced by dedication and produces glamour inevitably. 2. The violent energies of the solar plexus center will eventually be controlled by the quality of devotion. It is this quality which transforms the solar plexus center into the great clearing house for all emotional reactions and for all glamours, and makes it temporarily a cause of disaster, of conflict, of pain and of distress. As a result of both of these, a great transforming agency is set in motion by the quality of devotion, and the solar plexus center becomes not only a clearing house but the main factor in lifting both physical and emotional active energies from below the diaphragm into the heart center. This constitutes a long process which the aspirant is forced to face in the interim between initiations. We are told, and it is factually true, that the longest period between initiations is that to be found between the first and the second initiations. This is a truth which must be faced, but it should also be remembered that it is by no means the hardest period. The hardest period for the sensitive, feeling aspirant is to be found between the second and the third initiations. It is a period of intense suffering, of the penalty of applying factors of glamour and illusion, of pronounced involvement in situations which, for a long time, remain unclarified, and of a steady moving forward as best the beleaguered aspirant can, under the influence of right direction and spiritual determination. This he has usually to do in the dark, working under the action of the logical and understanding mind, but seldom under the influence of inspiration. Nevertheless, the good work goes on. The emotions are brought under control, and necessarily the factor of the mind assumes an increasingly right importance. Light, flickering and as yet uncertain and unpredictable, pours occasionally in from the soul, via the mind, adding frequently to the complications but producing eventually the needed control which will lead to and result in freedom. Ponder on these things. Freedom is the keynote of the individual who is facing the second initiation and its aftermath, preparation for the third initiation. Freedom is the keynote for the world disciple today, and it is freedom to live, freedom to think and freedom to know and plan, which humanity demands at this time. End of page 380. The third initiation, that of the Transfiguration, is one of the most important of them all. From one particular angle, it is peculiarly related to the fifth initiation of revelation and to the seventh initiation of resurrection. All three are concerned with freedom, freedom from the personality, freedom from blindness, or freedom from all the seven planes of our planetary existence, the planes which are sometimes referred to as the planes of human and superhuman evolution. You will have noted that lately I have been emphasizing an aspect of initiation hitherto little emphasized, the aspect of freedom. The path of initiation has at times been called the path of liberation, and it is to this essential aspect of the initiatory process that I am seeking to call your attention. I have pointed out continuously that initiation is not really the curious mixture of self-satisfied attainment, ceremonial, and hierarchical recognition as portrayed by the major occult groups. It is far more a process of excessively hard work, during which process the initiate becomes what he is. This may entail hierarchical recognition, but not in the form usually pictured. The initiate finds himself in the company of those who have preceded him, and he is not rejected but is seen and noted and then put to work. It is also a graded series of liberations, resulting in the attainment of increased freedom from that which lies behind in his experience. This carries with it the permission, soul enjoined or given, to proceed further on the way. These freedoms are the result of detachment, dispassion, and discrimination. At the same time, discipline enforces and makes possible the hard work required to pass the grade. All these four techniques, for that is what they are preceded by a series of disillusionments which, when realized and comprehended, leave the aspirant no choice but to move forward into greater light. I would like to have you study initiation from the angle of liberation, looking upon it as a process of strenuously attained freedoms. This basic aspect of initiation, when realized by the initiate, ties his experience into a firm relation with that of the whole of humanity, whose fundamental struggle is the attainment of that freedom whereby the soul and its powers can unfold and all men be free because of an individually attained freedom. If you will study the 9 initiations and look upon them from this angle, you will see how each does most definitely mark a point of attainment, and therefore the entire subject of initiation takes on a new beauty and appears more worthy of the pain and struggle of attainment. Initiation 3, the Transfiguration. The first 2 initiations, regarded simply as initiations of the threshold, are experiences which have prepared the body of the initiate for the reception of the terrific voltage of this third initiation. This voltage is passed through the body of the initiate under the direction of the planetary logos, before whom the initiate stands for the first time. The rod of initiation is used as the transferring agent. The second initiation freed the initiate from the astral level of consciousness, the astral plane, the plane of glamour, of illusion and of distortion. This was an essential experience because the initiate, standing before the one initiator for the first time at the third initiation, must be freed from any magnetic or attractive pull emanating from the personality. The mechanism of the personality must be so purified and so insensitive to the material attractions of the three worlds that there is henceforth nothing in the initiate which could offset the divine initiatory activity. The physical appetites are subdued and relegated to their rightful place, the desire nature is controlled and purified, the mind is responsive primarily to ideas, intuitions and impulses coming from the soul, and begins its true task as an interpreter of divine truth and a transmitter of ashramic intention. End of page 381. You will note, therefore, how this third initiation is a climaxing point and also inaugurates a new cycle of activity leading to the seventh initiation of resurrection. I would call your attention to the fact that the third, fifth and seventh initiations are under the control of the fifth, first and second rays. These, as you might expect, will constitute the emanating energies transmitted through the application of the rod of initiation. Initiation 3. The fifth ray of science. This inflowing energy produces its major effects upon the mind, or upon manas, the fifth principle. It enables the initiate to use the mind as its major instrument in the work to be done, prior to passing through the fourth and fifth initiations. Initiation V. The first ray of will or power. At this initiation the disciple appreciates for the first time the significance of the will and uses it to relate the head center and the center at the base of the spine, thus completing the integration started at the third initiation. Initiation 7. The second ray of love wisdom is here active, as the major planetary ray. The application of the rod of initiation by the initiator, working this time from the highest plane, the logoic plane, produces in a mysterious way an effect on the totality of humanity and, to a lesser extent, upon the allied kingdoms. The effect is similar to that produced in the individual at the fifth initiation, wherein the head center and the center at the base of the spine became closely en rapport, through the use of the will. Aspirants and disciples should remember that after the third initiation, the effects of the initiation which they may be undergoing are not confined simply to the individual initiate, but that henceforth at all the later initiations he becomes the transmitter of the energy which will pour through him with increasing potency at each application of the rod. He acts primarily as an agent for the transmission, for the stepping down and for the consequent safe distribution of energy to the masses. Each time a disciple achieves an initiation and stands before the initiator, he becomes simply an instrument whereby the planetary logos can reach humanity and bring to men fresh life and energy. The work done prior to and at the third initiation is purely preparatory to this type of service required from an energy transmitter. That is why, at the seventh initiation, the dominating ray of our planet, the second ray of love wisdom, is employed. There is no energy upon our planet of equal potency, and no expression of it has so pure and constructive a quality as that to which the initiate is subjected at the seventh initiation. This seventh initiatory climax marks another culminating point in the career of the initiate, and indicates his entrance into an entirely different cycle of experience. You will have noted, if you are comparing these instructions with the outline given by me earlier, that in this third initiation it is the ajna center, the center between the eyebrows, which is stimulated. This is a fact of great interest, because it is at this initiation that the disciple begins consciously and creatively to direct the energies being made available to him, doing so via the Ajna center and directed towards humanity as a whole. These energies are a. The energy of his own soul. This has a purely group effect, and though working through his personality, is consciously directed outward into the world, after the transforming process brought about as the energy received permeates his threefold mechanism. B. The energy of the ashram to which he belongs. Both this energy and the one above mentioned are necessarily the energy of his soul ray and of the ashram which is representative of that ray. The effect produced, according to his capacity of absorption and direction, will further the working out of the divine plan. C. The energy of the hierarchy itself. The hierarchy is primarily controlled by the energy of the second ray of love wisdom, though this dominant ray is modified and enriched through blending with the other 6 rays. His use of this energy will at first be largely an unconscious use, and he will register at this point no definite intention. This is due to the magnitude of the great reservoir of energies. He is a recipient of the incoming energy largely because he is an initiated member of the hierarchy and is also a pure channel for transmission. End of page 382. D. The peculiar energy which is transmitted to him by Sanat Kumara at the time of his initiation. This is a totally different energy to that transmitted to him at the earlier initiations. It comes from Shambhala and is uniquely, in a sense undefinable and hence incomprehensible to you, the energy of the planetary Logos himself. He directs extraplanetary energy, in the initiations which follow the third initiation, from the Ajna center of which he is possessed, to the head center of the initiate, and from thence immediately to the Ajna center of the initiate. Then this energy is directed outward into its destined field of service. This energy is of so high a quality that there is nothing of a registering mechanism in the initiate's equipment capable of registering its admission and circulation through his 3 head centers. Nevertheless, this energy does pour through him and out into the world, in spite of the fact that he remains unconscious of its presence. The Ajna center is the center of direction. It is placed symbolically between the 2 eyes, signifying the twofold direction of the life energy of the initiate, outward into the world of men and upward towards the divine life and source of all being. Where the direction of the energy is consciously undertaken, and there are certain energies of which the initiate is constantly aware, the Ajna center is controlled and dominated by the indwelling spirit of man. This spiritual man bases all action in relation to these entering energies on the ancient premise that energy follows thought. His thought life becomes, therefore, the field of his major effort. For he knows that the mind is the agent of direction. He endeavors to concentrate within himself so that eventually he may consciously control and direct all the incoming divine energies. This is, in reality, the major hierarchical endeavor and the work to which the masters are pledged and for which they are in constant training. As the evolutionary process proceeds, new and higher energies become available. This is particularly the case now, as they prepare for the reappearance of the Christ. There are 3 words which are directive words for the disciple as he handles his life, his environment and his circumstances. They are integration, direction, science. His task, as he faces it after the 3rd initiation, is to produce a greater personal integration so that he becomes increasingly a soul-infused personality, and also to integrate himself with his environment for service purposes. To this must be added the subtler task of integrating himself into the ashram so that he becomes an integral part of the master's band of workers. As the work of integration proceeds, he is striving all the time to learn the uses of the ajna center and consciously and with right understanding to work with, absorb, transmute and distribute energy as his major ashramic service. His keynote is right direction as the result of right reaction to hierarchical intention and the injunctions of his own soul. Both integration and direction, he discovers, require understanding of occult, scientific knowledge. He works then as a scientist, and for this reason all the three keynotes of his life as an initiate, before and immediately after the third initiation, are conditioned by and directed by the mind. The mental plane becomes the field of his major endeavor as a server. Again you see that I am presenting you with no glamorous picture of the initiatory process but only one of hard work, constant effort and strenuous mental and spiritual living. There is much here for you to consider, and what I have here given warrants sound reflection and much thought. It is my earnest hope and wish that you may realize that the teaching here given can be appropriated by you and that the initiatory process is one that eventually you will understand and in which you will participate. Signed, the Tibetan. The 9 initiations. Initiation 1 Birth. Freedom from the control of the physical body and its appetites. Initiation 2 Baptism. Freedom from the control of the emotional nature and the selfish sensitivity of the lower self. Initiation 3 Transfiguration. Freedom from the ancient authority of the threefold personality, marking a climaxing moment in the history of all initiates. Initiation 4 Renunciation. Freedom from all self-interest, and the renouncing of the personal life in the interest of a larger whole. Even soul consciousness ceases to be of importance and a more universal awareness, and one closer to the divine mind, takes its place. Initiation v Revelation. Freedom from blindness, a liberation which enables the initiate to see a new vision. This vision concerns the reality lying beyond any hitherto sensed or known. Initiation 6 Decision. Freedom of choice. I have dealt with these choices in an earlier part of this book. Initiation 7 Resurrection. Freedom from the hold of the phenomenal life of the 7 planes of our planetary life. It is in reality a lifting out of or above the cosmic physical plane. Initiation 8 Transition. Freedom from the reaction of consciousness, as that word is understood by you, and a liberation into a state of awareness, a form of conscious recognition which has no relation to consciousness, as you understand that term. It might be regarded as complete freedom from sensitivity, yet with a full flowering of that quality to which we give the inadequate name compassion. More I cannot say. Initiation 9 Refusal. Freedom from all possible forms of enticement, particularly with reference to the higher planes. It must constantly be remembered, and hence my constant reiteration, that our 7 planes are the 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. End of page 384. End of chapter 74. End of The Rays and the Initiations. This concludes the reading of a student's overview of the Ageless Wisdom, a textbook for the New Age.